Hey, folks. Dave here with my good friend Chris. I don't feel like doing the spiel today, Chris.
Okay, that's fine.
It's just too sad of a day. We can't. I want to. Folks. Yesterday, as of the recording, last night late, we learned. Actually, it may have been this morning when we learned it. Early this morning, we learned that one of my favorite actor, maybe my favorite actor, and Chris, I know he's on your list too. Val Kilmer has passed away at the age of 65, and we wanted to take a minute to just discuss that. And we love Val Kilmer. We wrote a Valentine to Val Kilmer in one of our early episodes. I think, Chris, what was it, our third episode?
It was our fourth episode.
Fourth episode, yes, very very early, about a year or 2 years ago, rather. Time flies. We wanted to spend a few minutes reflecting on him and his career, and then present our old episode back to you again because we think it's timely. So, Chris, when you heard when did you hear the news? Did you hear it from me? Was it my message?
No.
Okay.
I did not. And the way I heard it is both tragic and funny because I was in the shower this morning and my wife comes in the bathroom and she says, "Did you hear about Val Kilmer dying?" And I was like, "What?" like it was like she had assumed I had already read the news or something like that. And it was just, I was just smacked across the head like it were a wet fish. And it was really shocking. And so then when I got out of the shower, I went to the news sites and read about it and then went into our chat channel to tell you and they're from like 11:58
right, last night,
that. Yeah, you had messaged me to say that he had passed. So, it's heart-wrenching. The only thing I've been able to think about today is Tombstone and his portrayal as Doc Holliday. It breaks my heart that all the news sites are just like, "Oh, Batman Forever, Val Kilmer passed away." It's like, why did you pick that movie?
Right.
Not that he's bad in the movie.
No,
it's just there's so much better.
Yeah. Well, there's Tombstone, there's Heat, there's The Doors. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, right? You could mention that is good, but Batman, come on. I mean, I get it, right? Playing Batman, right? If you've played that character, like if you had played Spider-Man or Superman, it's going to get mentioned, right? Those are big headline characters, but he's you're right. I've heard that all day. But yeah, last night I was playing a video game. I took a break. My wife is half asleep, and I checked my personal email because it's what you're supposed to do, right? At midnight, you're supposed to be on your email, checking it obsessively. And New York Times, I get the New York Times headlines. Val Kilmer passed away at 65. We're like, what? And I realized it's April 1st, right? So my first thought was, okay, I got to make sure this isn't some sick April Fool's joke. I was pretty sure it wasn't. I did a little research, and and unfortunately, he passed away from pneumonia, or complications related to pneumonia. Very, very, very sad.
Yeah, it is. And, in the episode that people are going to get a chance to listen to, we talk quite a bit about the documentary that he made, Val, and what a tremendous piece of work that was outside of his acting career, but to be able to have the presence of mind to record that much of his life and then the willingness to share that in documentary form, it's really remarkable. And his son narrates the documentary in almost a pitch perfect timbre of Val Kilmer.
Yeah, he sounds just like him.
Yeah, and so I've been thinking about him all day, and his daughter was the person who announced it to the New York Times. And it's sad that anybody passes and leaves family members behind and was loved and appreciated like that. But what a career that man had to basically be immortal as far as we're concerned with. His likeness will always be around, and nobody will ever forget that Doc Holliday. That's for sure.
Nope. Doc Holliday. And then most recently, he had the appearance in Top Gun Maverick, which is a good movie. That's a fun movie. It's a silly movie, but not that scene. The scene with Val Kilmer is great. It was good to see him on screen. A lot of emotion from both him and Tom Cruise. Almost said Tom Hanks, but it was so good. And I think. If you don't know Val Kilmer very well, you want to get to know this actor better, stop what you're doing, watch Tombstone, watch The Doors, watch Heat. Those are all great. Watch even some silly stuff like Top Secret. That's a funny movie. It's not great, but it's pretty funny. And he's good in it. He sings. He's a musician. Yeah. He actually released, I think, one album in his life because he is a singer, musician, and and then do all that. Watch the Val documentary. I believe it's on Prime. I think it's on Prime.
Yes.
And then listen to our episode, our retrospective on him, and you'll probably learn about some other cool movies to watch with him in it. You can skip Island of Dr. Moreau. You'll learn everything you need to know about it from the documentary Valley, so you don't have to watch that movie. But yeah, it was a tough. Lynch was tough. This was a tough one, and especially a few months back, I saw a Facebook short that he had posted. Where he was trying on a Batman mask. Someone sent him, and he was talking, and his voice was still not there, but you could tell he looked better. He sounded a bit better. I was like, hey, that's great. Good for Val. I mean, recovery was a possibility. Some level of recovery was. Unfortunately, he got sick and didn't make it. It's absolutely heartbreaking. But yeah, this and David Lynch in the same year. This is a tough one.
I know 2025 just keeps getting more and more rough. So I'm hoping that there's a peak of sunlight behind the clouds that's coming out. But I don't know. Val, it was a tough one. Lynch is a tough one. But I'm glad that we had this episode that we could repost. I'm glad that we get to praise Val Kilmer and his talents one more time.
So, folks, without any more delay, here is our Valentine to Val Kilmer. There's lots of things I love, right? I got a big heart.
Sure.
You're here in my home, and I love my children. I love my wife. Chris, you're one of my best friends. I love you. I also love Val Kilmer. And today I'd like to just take a moment for us to pause and reflect on what Mr. Kilmer, Val, if I may, what he means to us, what his work is the joy that it's brought us, and we talk about kind of like just a sweep through his career and talk about some of the highlights of it and the performances that meant the most to us.
It sounds like we're going to do a Val Kilmer episode.
I think we are. I think I love Val Kilmer.
Well, you know what I say?
The name of that episode.
You know what I say to that? I'm your Huckleberry.
Yes. I will respond with, you're a drunk longer. Johnny Ringo. Michael Bain.
A fantastic actor as well.
I'm not sure I could fill a I Love Michael Bain episode.
He's done less. I mean, no disrespect to him, but good actor.
Good actor. We'll get to that, though, in a bit.
Yes, we will. Which means 3 episodes in a row. Tombstone reference.
That's right. We just should do a Tombstone episode to cap it off. So, did you get a chance to watch the Val Kilmer documentary on Amazon?
Yes, I did.
Let's start off with that because it's boy, what a fantastic documentary.
Yes,
and it is a look back on Val Kilmer's life, narrated by Val Kilmer using footage that he shot himself. Val Kilmer's son, excuse me.
Yes.
And Jake Kilmer, is that his?
I believe
Jack Kilmer.
Jack Kilmer?
Yes,
okay.
That's it.
But that
narrated by Jack Kilmer, who sounds exactly like Val Kilmer.
That was one of my big takeaways from the doc. Number one is how brilliant of a move that was from a production standpoint, especially given what happened to Mr. Kilmer. And then the fact that at the beginning, before we got to the scene of his son doing the recording, I'm like, is that Val Kilmer?
How did they do this?
So
was it some
brilliant
trickery, right? With these artificial intelligent voice reproductions.
Yeah.
And no, it was just his son who's doing the narration, having his dad's words that his dad wrote, Val, and he's doing it because Val Kilmer doesn't have much of a voice anymore due to the throat cancer that he's been dealing with for years. But the movie is brilliant. So for anybody who has not seen it, it is a Val Kilmer, in his own words, performed by his son, using footage that he filmed over the years. Val Kilmer always had a camera in his hand, was filming home videos from the time that he was a kid throughout his career in Hollywood, lots of stuff from behind the scenes. Island of Dr. Moreau, some very interesting stuff. Far more interesting was what Val shot than anything that made its way onto the movie. In preparation for this discussion, I know everyone's thinking, wait, it's not spontaneous. You were listening to things you love, and no.
It was a good segue, though.
It was, yeah, no, I have to admit, that was play acting. But I tried to watch a little bit of Island of Dr. Moreau. That is a terrible movie. I think we just say that up front.
We saw it in theaters.
We saw it in the theaters.
Yeah.
I even remember, we saw it at the Northtown Mall Theater.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I'm pretty sure we did. It's an old mall.
It would have either been that one or it would have been...
Town and Country?
Yes.
Yeah, it was one of those two. The ghetto malls, the ghetto theaters from our area. But wow. Anyway, I tried to watch it in preparation. Just terrible. But this is a really interesting view on Val Kilmer's life, his upbringing, his relationship with his parents, his wife, his children, his faith, which did not have a concept of how important Val Kilmer's faith was to him. Val Kilmer's a Christian Scientist. Really interesting guy.
So the faith carries through the documentary. I didn't quite pick up that he was still Christian Scientist. I kind of got the feeling from the documentary that he was just a man of faith as opposed to adhering to the religion of his parents.
He is a man of faith, but he did go to a Christian Science meeting. Remember in the documentary, he said, "What if I walk in there and I come out healed? Wouldn't that be crazy?"
Okay.
I don't know if you recall, that was towards the end of the movie when he's on his way to the meeting. So he did choose, and not to get too deep into the doctrine of Mr. Kilmer's chosen religion, but Christian Scientists have rules around the type of health care that they receive. He chose, when he was diagnosed with cancer, to go ahead and receive health care that would typically not be something that someone of that faith would participate in. The surgeries, that sort of interventions. He did it, he said, I read an interview, he did it for his kids, because he didn't want his kids. He had seriously considered not doing those things and sticking by the tenets of that particular denomination, but his children wanted him to do it, and he did it for his children. So, I mean, there's a question about, like, how strict is he? But he clearly is a man of faith.
And I didn't know that about the interview. I'm glad that you read that and brought that to the conversation. I think that's important.
What an interesting guy. But so anybody who's not seen that, pause this. Go take the next 110 minutes. Go watch that documentary.
It's on Prime Video. You all have a subscription.
It is very well done, very entertaining, and there's some parts of it that, frankly, you will laugh because there's some really uplifting parts. You realize that he was a really neat and good guy who had some huge difficulties, right? And he faced some things in his life. He was also a jerk to people. He owns that, and you'll come up with a new perspective of him, and you'll cry, right? There's some sad stuff in it, but you get to see the full arc of this guy who was, in the movie with Tom Cruise, was probably the more handsome of the two gentlemen, right? Or at least right up there with him. And what kind of life that he, the tragedies that he's gone through, particularly fighting cancer.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'll get to that in a minute. I'll get to that as we go through the work. But there's some things that the documentary got me to do that I otherwise would not have done. So I'd like to let's just reflect back on on his filmography. Kind of start from the beginning.
So before we go into his filmography, I wanted to mention his brother that passed away.
Yes.
Which factors heavily into the Val documentary. And it was... So I had not seen the Val documentary until Dave proposed this episode, and then that was one of the things I had to do to prepare for it. And so I saw it very recently. Now, hearing the story of his younger brother who had a passion for film, had a passion for directing, and they always made these home videos and movies together, which you get to see pieces of. And me watching Val so close to Spielberg's film, The Fabelmans, being out, I could not help but see those parallels between the way that Steven Spielberg grew up making films with his family as a youth, and then turning into the legendary filmmaker that he is, and then seeing Val Kilmer's younger brother, who was essentially doing the exact same thing. And you can't help but think, if tragedy hadn't struck, I mean, what kind of filmography would this kid have gone on to make? And there would have been two Kilmers that we would have had to talk about.
Partnering with his brother.
Exactly. And it's just interesting to think about that. And that's one of the more tragic parts of the documentary. I mean, aside from Val himself dealing with cancer.
Lots of tragic stuff.
Lots of tragic
with his
stuff.
Parents and his dad and
Yes. But the message of the documentary is very uplifting. It's very it's very, overcoming adversity kind of things, which I think is a wonderful message at any point for anybody. So
forgiveness, grace.
Yes.
He had shown forgiveness to people. He had received forgiveness from people. It really is. It's a really interesting view into the life of someone you think, this handsome, successful, rich guy, and all of the things that he dealt with that are, they are just heartbreaking and difficult.
Well, and there's that scene where he's talking about the situation, the economic situation his father got into.
Yes.
And where he says, I had a choice to write a check for everything I had or sue my father, and I wrote the check.
Yeah.
And there's probably not a lot of people on the face of the planet that would have made that choice. They would have, especially where he was, the fame that he'd had, they'd be fighting to protect that. And he fought to protect his relationship with his father.
Yep.
And that's commendable. But I just wanted to get that said before we move on to the filmography.
It's wonderful because that movie is about the family aspect of it is just as big a part of that documentary as any of the work that he did, the film work. So, yeah. Great piece, and maybe one of the best things that we're going to talk about today.
Maybe, and it's a miracle that he carried a camera around that regularly.
Yes,
and this is not when your phone was your camera. This is when you've got a giant thing strapped to your hand, and the fact that he would take that everywhere and film everything. Kudos to him for doing that. That's pretty amazing.
It is. And I tell you what's amazing is that he went and he had that camera, and on the Highland Dr. Moreau, he pulled that camera out, and Brando was playing along with him, having a good time. Brando's a notoriously weird, private dude who you would think would slap that camera out and walked off the set and never to return. But he obviously had such respect for Val Kilmer that he played along with it, had a good time. That's just the kind of craft that Val had. And also, he was also spoken very highly of, I read, by Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, John Voight, the people he worked with on the set of Heat. This guy is a great actor, and because he had gotten a reputation for being difficult, but other actors said, no, he's not difficult. He's a gentleman, nice guy. Mira Sorvino stuck up for him and said, when people say he's not, he's a very nice guy. So I think he got kind of that, probably acting like a butt a handful of times in his life, kind of painted him in that. And I think that some things went on with Batman that made him seem difficult. But it seems like he was actually a pretty darn cool
I would
guy.
have been difficult in Batman Forever if I'd been in that film.
Yes. So let's start off with the first one. His big introduction.
Yep.
Was Top Secret, which is one of those goofy parody films that had a lot of music in it. Of those films, type of films of that era, it one of my least favorites. I'm just going to be honest. I find it unfunny.
It's got its moments, but its moments are absolutely just one-off jokes, eye roll kind, the kind of thing where you're like, wah, wah, as opposed to getting a true belly laugh out of you.
Yeah, so it showed that he had range. He could do comedy, even if it wasn't particularly funny. He did some singing in the movie. But yeah, and then he followed that up pretty quickly with Real Genius, which is a little bit better, but also not great.
Not great.
He was building his career, and it's not a movie that I have a whole lot of love for.
Agreed.
But then the big one comes, a big opportunity that blew open doors for both he and for his co-star,
Tim Robbins.
Yes, of course, Tim Robbins. And Anthony Edwards. Those are the big. After that, I'm pretty sure that was it, right?
When you say Top Gun, it's Tim Robbins and Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, Tom Skerritt. He's a big deal. Of course, he's in that movie too. No, he and Tom Cruise. That movie that I'll be completely honest. I had never watched all the way through.
Really?
Until the new one came out,
Okay.
and I sat down and realized I had watched all of Top Gun, but never in one sitting, right? Like, I would watch 15 minutes of it on TBS here.
Yeah.
And then on WGN, I'd watch 20 minutes, and then on TNT, I'd see the middle part. And I pieced it together, and you know, fighter pilots and volleyball. I got those two things out of it. But, you know, for its time, it was a big deal.
I love the
Tony
movie.
Scott
Yeah.
was bringing it. It had the incredible soundtrack. Kenny Loggins, never been so cool.
Well, this was back when it was a congressional bill that Kenny Loggins had to provide the theme song for every 80s movie.
He was.
And
yes,
when that
he was
got
busy.
when that got revoked, the world became a sorrier place.
Yep.
But no, all joking aside,
Trickle down Kenny Loggins. It was a
Kenny
Reagan crazy plan. It did not work.
I think it worked too well.
It worked too well.
We never should have backed off from that. No, all joking aside, I love Top Gun. Always have. I mean, from a kid, and I will say this. I will say this as a kid, my favorite part of Star Wars was the dogfighting. It was the trench run. It wasn't the lightsaber stuff. And so Top Gun was totally in my wheelhouse. I was just smitten with that movie. Loved it. Watched it over and over again as a kid. Loved Top Gun 2, Days of Thunder as well. Same movie, different vehicle.
Yes.
And then when they finally did Top Gun 3, maybe I'm getting my titles wrong. I don't know. Anyway,
Yes.
so yeah, I'm on board with this, and I love Kilmer in Top Gun. I love Cruise in Top Gun, and in that Val documentary, I thought it was fascinating where he's talking about how there's nothing on the page for Iceman.
Yeah.
And he is creating the stuff, you know, and what's amazing to me is he's not doing it in like a one-upsman kind of thing.
Right.
You know, he's not trying to steal Tom Cruise's spotlight. Everybody knows it's Tom Cruise's movie, right? You know, even though he wasn't Tom Cruise, capital T, capital C back then,
Yes.
he had the starring role. It was his movie. And
It's really where he established that, right?
Yes.
He got his capitals.
Yes, he did.
His
On
capital
Top Gun.
letters.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did.
he did.
And Kilmer's respectful of that, but he takes that space and creates this interesting character, even to the point where he's like, yeah, the dynamic between the two of them, it really didn't exist in the script. And Val Kilmer kind of thrust that into Top Gun, and it made his performance as Iceman every bit as revered today as Tom
Yes.
Cruise's performance.
And it made
as
Tom
Maverick.
Cruise's performance better because it
Yes,
gave
it
him
did.
someone to play off of instead of making him look like, you know, it gave him an equal. An equal in terms of, this is a guy who's just as good looking as me, that's just as athletic as me. He is just as good of a fire pilot as me.
Yep.
And I think it would have been a weaker movie without Val figuring out a way to elevate. He elevated the whole film by bringing that character to life.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no question.
Yeah, and the other thing about that movie is it sort of established that Tom Cruise, everything's got to be realistic, sort of that pattern that he's followed. Like in Edge of Tomorrow, you know, he kept dying over and over again, and I don't know how he pulled that off. I mean,
It's, you know,
listen,
it's just
the Scientologist thing.
commitment to the role. You know,
You're going to cut that joke out, right? I don't want to be disappeared.
no, but they are going to come out.
I'm done.
Just for the record, I have absolutely no problem with Mr. Cruise or his chosen religion.
He is. I mean, he's yeah. But that felt like it's, you know, it started there.
Yeah.
And now it's just part of his. You know, it's not a Tom Cruise movie unless he's doing crazy, realistic
He's
things.
like-
And he's on the bleeding
Exactly,
edge.
right? Yeah, he's flying him. So he doesn't need an airplane. He's just flying himself now.
But for my money, the best performance in that film is Val Kilmer's. His character is more interesting. More. I don't want to say relatable because no one in that film is relatable because they're meant to be caricatures and superheroes. But he's the more interesting of the two.
He's got a story, and you know that.
Yes.
And you know, Maverick, for as great as the performance is and as great as the movie is, Maverick is there to cry when Goose gets killed and then to fly the plane at the end of the movie. And
to sing.
And you know, and to fall in love with Kelly McGillis.
Yeah.
So, but Iceman he's the interesting one, and you're
He
like,
is.
you know, I wanted to see the alternate universe where Top Gun 2 was the Iceman movie.
Yes, bingo. Yeah, And you do get a nice hint of that in the follow-up.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a moment. Then next he went on to do Willow, which is a film... Boy, I'm going to lose my nerd creds here. I have never finished that movie.
Really?
What I've attempted to watch every time, I hate it. Wow. I hate the brownies. I hate Val Kilmer's horrible wig. It's just not for me.
I like it. Now, I say that not having seen it in 20 some odd years. But I like Warwick Davis. I think he's a cool guy. I like the fact that Val Kilmer was in the movie. I mean, when I was a kid, like 88, is that Willow? Yeah. So 88, I remember seeing that, and I remember thinking Mad Mardigan was the dude. I mean, I was like, this guy is the coolest guy I've ever seen on camera. Had the little Mad Mardigan figure that I played with as a kid, And this was the movie where my brain connected Val Kilmer as an actor. So it was, it was like before, if somebody would have said Val Kilmer, I'd be like, I don't know who you're talking about. And if they would have said Iceman from Top Gun, I probably would have been like, oh, yeah. But
the guy who does the teeth thing. That's a common thing we always do. I've been clicking my teeth all day at my kids. They're concerned they're going to have to put dad in a home.
Well, and it's not good for you.
You've been meaning to talk to me about that, I think is what you were going for.
So this was the first movie where I recognized Val Kilmer was a person. And even, because I was a very precocious 8-year-old when it comes to film. And I was like, well, my favorite cinematographer is, so that's where it happened for me. When Val Kilmer landed on the scene as more than just a guy in a movie, it was like, oh, Val Kilmer is cool. That was Willow for me.
Well, I'm going to skip a little bit down. In 91, I think Val Kilmer, if Top Gun put him on the map, I think his performance in 1991 as Jim Morrison in The Doors established him as a very serious actor telling a story about an individual that I don't think was any better understood after this movie, but a very mysterious and iconic character in Jim Morrison, a person. That movie was kind of I far more than anything up to this point. That was the movie that set me on the path to Val Kilmer fandom as well as Doors fandom. Mm-hmm. I read several books about Jim Morrison. Val Kilmer brought that character to life.
Yes. Oh, it's an amazing performance.
It is.
Nobody else could have done it. I mean, you'll read some retconning of history, and people will be like, "Well, John Travolta did a screen test that was just amazing." No, I don't care. It's Val's role.
Yeah,
he looks the part. He sounds the part. It's a frightening transformation.
It is,
and it's remarkable. And I don't know how he didn't get Best Actor for that.
We should. I didn't think to do this. We should have went.
Who got it?
Who got it?
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I'm gonna have to look it up. But while I'm doing that, it's I have mixed feelings of the film, but I do not have mixed feelings of the performance.
Yeah, I agree completely. I like most Oliver Stone movies. I have mixed feelings about the film, but the performance, and not just his performance, but Ray Manzarek. Performed by Kyle MacLachlan, was also a brilliant turn. I don't know if he was anything like that. I always envisioned him after watching that he was just like Agent Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks. But no, that was, Val Kilmer brought it. Fantastic performance. And you're right, he should have won the Academy Award. Who won it that year? I know it's going to be something horrible.
Actually, you can almost forgive him. It was Anthony Hopkins for Silence of the Lambs.
Almost, although he was only in the movie, I believe, like 20 minutes.
Yeah, something like that.
And yeah, sure, that was good, but I don't think it was this good. Maybe
to me,
you can almost
not.
Forgive him, but yeah. I definitely think that Jim Morrison's the transformation was real.
Oh, it was. And honestly, looking at this list, I'm surprised it was so early in his career. Like, I hadn't registered 1991 for that movie. I would have thought it would have been
later. A bit later. He had a little bit more under it. Yeah. So he did some other stuff after The Doors. He did Thunderheart. Won't talk too much. I remember watching that because we were watching Val Kilmer movies.
Absolutely, we're going through the list.
And we're like, okay, I'll watch this. It was fine. He played an FBI agent. But the next one, 93, just a couple of years after The Doors, in my favorite Val Kilmer performance of all time, as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Tombstone is the best Western ever made. I will, I'm not a big Western genre is not something I'm going to pretend to be an expert in or love. Right? I've seen some of the good ones. Right? I've seen Unforgiven, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Some of the other spaghetti westerns. They're fine. Wyatt Earp, which was Kevin Costner's version of that same story, fine, but my goodness, Tombstone.
It's so good.
Brilliant movie, brilliant cast.
Yes.
Doc Holliday, as performed by Val Kilmer, is just an iconic performance.
Yes. And again, shocking to me that he did not receive the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. The person who did receive the Oscar that year, Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive. No.
Infuriating.
Yeah, not even close.
Infuriating. I like that movie. I like Tommy Lee Jones.
Agreed. But when you compare that to Val Kilmer,
he wasn't acting. He was just yelling
and listing off things. He did excellent listing off things in that movie. But Val in Tombstone, and it's amazing if you dig into the history of Tombstone, the film. It's a miracle that movie is coherent, let alone amazing. I mean, the first director was fired off of it. The second director they brought on, by all accounts, had no clue what he was doing. Everyone in the cast hated him. And some people will say Kurt Russell is the real director of it.
I've heard that.
And I've also heard people say, oh, Kurt didn't direct, but Kurt did rally the troops. Which
I can see that. Sure, the veteran actor,
absolutely,
people respect and listen to.
Yeah, but whoever did it, the fact that movie came together, it's so good.
The strength of the performances. You got a cast like that, right?
Yes.
You think about every major player in that movie. The Earp brothers were played by what's wrong with me? Kurt Russell, the beef guy. And Game Over guy. My mind went blank, and I literally forgot who these actors are.
Okay, so Sam
Elliott.
Sam Elliott and Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton, Game Over. Yes. And then you had the bad guys, were Powers Booth. Or Booth Powers. You can go either way on his name. It works both ways. Powers Booth. Michael Bain.
Yep.
You had... we were just talking about...
The guy from Avatar.
Yeah, the guy from Avatar. Stephen Lang, who was Ike Clanton.
Yes.
You had Terry O'Quinn as the mayor of the city.
Yeah.
You had Billy Zane as the Shakespearean actor. Brilliant cast, right? There's others we're forgetting here too.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I can't say enough about the movie.
Billy Bob Thornton.
What's that?
Billy
Bob Thornton is in it briefly.
Yeah,
and someone who's going to shoot them until he is going to shoot the Earps, and until he sees Doc Holliday. That's your introduction to Doc Holliday. Is that he's the guy who walks in the room and scares the bad guys off.
Yeah.
But the good guys respect, right? But he's got these questionable morals, and he wants it to seem that way. It's a brilliant performance.
It is.
Whether or not Doc Holliday was really like that, you suggested a book to me called Doc, which is on my list. I hope that it's just exactly. I hope that as I'm reading it, I see Val Kilmer doing these things. But my goodness,
if Doc Holliday was not really like that, Doc Holliday, wherever he is now, is telling people that's the way it was. Yeah.
He's doing the voice, and he's like, Doc, I get it. You want to sound like Val Kilmer, but you don't. And your mustache looks ridiculous, and you're sweaty.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for you. You should clean up. I think we can both agree that's just one of his most impactful performances.
It's so good.
And it's a movie that if it's on, if I'm flipping through whatever, in streaming, this modern world of streaming, you rarely flip, although there are a few services, Pluto, and I use Philo, where you still do that a little bit. And if I see it, I put it on.
Yeah.
And even if I'm doing other things, just have it on in the background. It's just one of those films that you don't get tired of. Shortly after that, he was also in a very brief role in True Romance, which, just want to mention that. He played Elvis.
Yeah.
And that movie got some... There are three... That movie, by the way, was written by Quentin Tarantino. I don't know if you recall, if you did that. Yeah. But there are three roles in that small roles that are better than any of the big roles.
I bet I can name them.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Elvis, Val Kilmer.
Yes.
Gary Oldman. I don't remember the character's
Drexel.
name. Drexel, Gary Oldman.
Yes.
And then Brad Pitt as the smoke a bowl guy.
Yes, smoke a bowl guy. And those three roles, which is about 3 minutes of screen time total, actually make that movie. And I like that movie. You got Walken and Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper doing this great back and forth that I will not repeat here because I would not use the kind of language those gentlemen use. They shouldn't have used it either. But what a cool crime movie. But Val's very brief Elvis Presley appearing as an apparition, the angel on the shoulder of our main character, played by Christian Slater. Funny, weird, good. And speaking of good, let's talk about things that are not. The next major film that he did was the third Batman movie, Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever, where Val Kilmer, on paper, one of the best casting choices ever.
It makes sense.
For Batman. It makes sense on paper.
Yeah.
With better material, I think he could have been an iconic Batman.
So I do believe the failing of Batman Forever is Joel Schumacher.
Yes.
And Schumacher has done some great films. So I'm not putting him down as a director at all. I just think that was a bad combination. Schumacher and Batman. It did not work. So Val is good as Wayne. He's good as Batman. But I would contend that even if he'd had better material, I don't think we would have seen him for the fourth Batman. I think, especially judging from the Val documentary, I think that he was very nonplussed with what that role needed. And he even makes the comment in the documentary, people want to be Batman. People don't want to play Batman in a movie. And you can kind of see that even through modern Batmans. I mean, they kind of the purpose of them in cinema is to stand there in the costume and then let the stuff happen around him. So I get what he's saying. So I'm not a fan of Batman Forever.
No.
I don't think it's a great film.
It is not.
I actually think the best part of the film is Tommy Lee Jones. I do, in a sad sort of way, enjoy his Two-Face because it's so over the top. And the fact that Tommy Lee Jones could hold his own in a frame with Jim Carrey, kudos to Tommy Lee Jones. I think he probably deserved the Oscar for this more than he did for The Fugitive. But it's not a good film.
It's not. It's not a good film. And you're right. Schumacher was a terrible fit for Batman, for a Batman movie, and that he got also did the follow-up, which was worse somehow. And we don't need to beat that dead horse, but. But I think on paper it really made a ton of sense, and Kilmer was ready to do it. Right, he was excited by the opportunity. I think that if you would have put him in Nolan's films, I think you would have gotten a different performance, a good performance, and you would have had an individual who might have came back for another one.
Maybe because Bruce Wayne's much stronger in those films.
Yes.
And that seemed to be what Val was missing, was an opportunity to act and to get into the material versus just getting into a rubber costume.
Yes, where you couldn't hear, couldn't move, and you were super hot, and you were always about to pass out. And you were just angry and frustrated because you were reacting, soap opera acting. I think he likened it to being in a soap opera at some point because you had to overact. And I don't. Boy.
But the next one on the list.
Oh my goodness, next one on the list is just is up there with Tombstone and with The Doors.
Yeah. Which is Heat.
And I recently rewatched this movie.
Oh, it's flawless.
And it is I would say that the big problem with it is it maybe in terms of the cars they drove, the clothes they wear, it kind of aged a little bit.
That's fair.
But what a brilliant cast.
Yeah.
And great performances all around. And Val Kilmer is one of those great performances. And he's a great performance in a movie that has De Niro and Pacino giving some of their best work.
Yes.
Particularly De Niro. I mean, he's just kind of underselling it. Some subtlety to his performance. But wow, what a great performance that Kilmer brings as Chris Shirless. the criminal who does not take the advice of his mentor, gets involved in a relationship, has a kid,
Can't walk away.
can't walk away, right? And brings it. What a brilliant performance.
Yeah, no,
And,
it's phenomenal.
yeah, it is. And a great movie. I've always loved it when people compare The Dark Knight to Heat, right? Because it's like the Heat of superhero movies.
Yes.
And we're not talking about The Dark Knight, but that the fact that you've got that brilliant movie and Heat gets compared to that just shows the level that Heat's on. In terms of gangster crime films, it is up there, probably the best of its kind made in the 90s.
Yeah.
Michael Mann really brought it.
It's good. I haven't seen it in far too long, but it's a
I
fantastic
rewatched
film.
it. I bought it on Vudu and rewatched it. I don't know what I really I think I wanted to see. I rewatched the Godfather movies and I was like, I want to see these two interact again. I kind of forgot, and wow,
Yeah.
great movie. Here comes the next guy. In '96, The Island of Dr. Moreau. We did, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
We saw this in the theater.
We did. Based on a tremendous book by H.G. Wells. So you can't blame the source material. Also had production problems. The original director was fired off of the set. John Frankenheimer was brought in to course correct the movie, whatever that means. And until I watched Val, I had completely just dismissed this movie as an utter just disaster and one of those things where, I mean, it's kind of a miracle that any movie is coherent with as many different people as you have working on at a different time. And there are just those movies out there that it just does not congeal and it doesn't come together. And Island Dr. Moreau is definitely one of those that it does not come together. What was interesting to me watching Val is you get the sense that it could have been a great movie. And Kilmer talks about his opportunity to work with Brando, who's one of his idols, and the fact that because of the way John Frankenheimer decided to run that set, Brando was just like, okay, fine, guess you don't need me, and to the point of having other actors just in the makeup that Brando was supposed to be in the scene, and Frankenheimer being like, so you can't even tell. And Val talking about how, okay, there's a difference between visually not being able to tell and not having Marlon Brando in your movie, you know? And if your director doesn't get that, I can't really blame Brando for being like, forget it. I'm getting paid either way. I'm staying in my trailer. And
eating buckets of ice cream, being all weird.
Yes. So I think the tragedy is there was something there. It could have been an interesting movie.
You had the cast.
You had
Brando.
Yep.
You had Val Kilmer. You had David Thewlis.
Yep.
You had a core set of talent that could elevate weak scripts, poor direction, but it just was just so poor.
Yeah.
It was a level beyond poor. It was just a set of misfires.
Yeah. It didn't work.
Yeah, but shortly thereafter, he was in The Ghost of the Darkness with Michael Douglas.
What do you think of that movie?
You know what I think about? I think I just don't remember it very well. And I remember watching it because I like Val Kilmer.
Well, yeah, there was no other reason to watch.
And he had not been in it, right? It had been, any other actor maybe. I wouldn't have watched it, right?
I remember liking the movie. I have not seen it since it was released. And I remember thinking it was a fairly decent movie. Funny side note, it is my wife's least favorite movie of all time. And she cannot articulate why. And I've tried to get her to, but she just absolutely hates
this movie. Is it The Lion Killing?
It's got to be something like that. But I have great joy in every time we're trying to watch something and she's like, I don't care, put anything on. I will always put on The Ghost of the Darkness.
Ah, yeah.
And I'll get that eye roll and that 5 minutes of utter just enjoyment out of that, and then switch to something that we'll actually watch together. But so on the Val Kilmer did make my wife's least favorite movie, so he's got that going for him.
Yeah. Boy, the only thing I remember about it is watching it because of Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
And then, set in Africa.
Yeah.
And
it is about lions that are viciously attacking the villagers.
Is it based on a true story?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, how accurate it is, I could not say.
Yeah, but yeah.
And Michael Douglas and Val Kilmer, they're hired to take out the lions so that it stops bothering the village. That's the basic plot of it. And if I remember right, spoiler alert for a movie that's 30 years old, Michael Douglas perishes and Val Kilmer takes out the lion.
Yes, I believe that's how it happened. Or Michael Douglas just got bored and stopped showing up, and Val Kilmer finished.
And the director was like, see, he looks exactly like Michael Douglas. You can't even tell.
That's right. John Frankenheimer showed up to direct that day. And so in 97, Val Kilmer did a film that was supposed to, they thought, maybe establish a new franchise. And that was, he brought back the character of the Saint. Roger Moore was the Saint in the 60s British, it was a TV show, right?
It was.
Not terribly familiar with the source material. I remember my wife and I, when we were dating, going to see this film at the local theater, the Palace. It was an okay movie. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was that sort of 90s movie where we're going to throw some technology at you and unrealistic depictions of computers and hacking, and just sort of hand wave that off and focus on Val Kilmer in sort of a gadgety, spy-ish cat burglar type film.
I think the problem with The Saint is it didn't lean into the comedy enough to make it a funny movie, but it leaned into it too much to really upset the tone of the film. You can't watch it as a serious spy movie, and you can't watch it as a comedy. And I think, to me, that's the real failing of it. And the TV show kind of has that same problem balancing. What does this want to be?
Oh, it's the Roger Moore problem.
Well, that's entirely true.
I just coined that. I have no idea. But that's the way I feel about some of the Roger Moore Bond
the Bond
movies,
films,
right?
yeah.
They don't know what to lean into, because to lean too far into the comedy, you harm the Bond mythos and the pedigree of the films that came before it that weren't that way.
Yeah.
And there's some tonal issues. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so that's my feeling of The Saint. I think Val does a fine job in the film. I think that if you took that movie and played it more seriously and played off the disguises as, oh, this guy really is a chameleon, I think you have a much better chance at a successful movie.
But the disguises kind of ended up like Dana Carvey in Master of Disguise.
They kind of played him off as, oh, isn't it funny? Now he's got a French accent.
Yes.
And even though Kilmer could pull it off, and it's like, okay, I buy that this is a new person, so to speak. I mean, the audience always knows it's Val Kilmer,
right?
But to me, it's tone. It's like, is this supposed to be a funny costume, or is this supposed to be like, oh, he's really good at that? And I feel like if the film, I would have preferred it to go more serious, but I feel like if it had gone an inch or two either way, it would be a stronger movie.
Wow. Yeah. No. But it still is entertaining. It's still it's lightweight popcorn.
There you go.
It's enjoyable in its way. I think I picked it up a couple years ago. I watched it on something and watched through it. It was on HBO or something on a rainy day, and I remember. I have good memories of it because I was dating my wife at the time. We saw it together at our local little theater. After that, he did a voice. He did the voice of Moses and God. I don't remember that in Prince of Egypt. Now I got to admit, I have not watched all of this movie.
I beg to differ.
Did we watch it together?
This will be a story that'll either gain us listeners or they'll run away to the hills. But we got together one night with one of our mutual friends for a guys' movie night, and everybody was supposed to bring a DVD, and we would choose what to watch. And because it was a guys' movie night, like somebody brought Aliens, somebody brought Die Hard, and then somebody brought Prince of Egypt. And collectively, every single one of us was like, let's watch Prince of Egypt.
Wow, okay.
And we watched Prince of Egypt.
You know what? I am remembering this.
So
what
you
an
have
odd
seen
choice.
It was a very odd choice. It was just one of those things. And I think as opposed to, 20, 30 something year olds choosing the cartoon. I think it was more of like, we've seen all these other ones.
Well, yeah. Was this Mark who
it was.
organized? Okay,
Yeah.
Mark's a mutual friend.
Yeah.
He works with me now, worked with me forever.
And-
okay,
and so
I am remembering this.
So
I am
you have
remembering
seen
it.
Prince of
Yes.
Egypt.
I did, yeah.
It's a very well done cartoon.
Yeah.
It's a very well done retelling of the Moses story. And for Val Kilmer, if you're going to dip your toe into voice acting, Moses and God, there are worse ways to start off.
Yes. Yeah, I remember very little about it, though you're bringing my memory back here. Yeah, and I think maybe it's because I'm familiar with the story, right?
Oh,
so,
sure.
And that's probably just
Yeah.
kind of blended in with all the other retellings.
Charlton Heston's and all the
yeah,
others.
and just reading the Bible, hearing it at the church.
But it's a good movie,
Okay.
and it was one that I introduced to my kids because it was a cartoon, and we knew we could get them to sit still for it. And even to this day, everybody still loves Prince of Egypt. It's very well done.
After that was in '98. Val Kilmer kind of hit a rough spot in his career, and it's talked about a bit in the documentary. A big part of it is he got branded as difficult to work with. There's one on here I'll mention, and Chris, you point out any from his filmography here, but one that I did definitely saw in the theaters was Red Planet, which was part of that early 2000s Mars craze. Red Planet and Mission to Mars came out, I think, maybe 6 months apart. Red Planet had it was the campier of the two. From that time period, not the hired sci-fi, a little bit silly. It had Terrence Stamp in it. It had who else was in it? Now my mind's gone blank.
Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer, yes.
I don't know who else. I haven't seen it.
But I think the thing that bothers me about that watching it, because I did watch it recently. I had surgery a few months back, and I went on a tear of watching science fiction movies. I went on a tear of. I watched the Ryan Reynolds filmography, and somehow that led into me watching a bunch of science fiction movies.
Okay.
And this was on there, as well as Mission to Mars. I watched them back to back. I think the thing that bothers me about it is it wasn't a very good movie. And it's kind of like he was getting the work that he could get to pay the bills. Financial issues at the time, we had mentioned it. So it kind of made me sad to see a great actor in a very mediocre film.
Yeah, and honestly, we skipped At First Sight, which I'm going to bring up not because it's a great movie. It's a fine movie, but it's not going to change your life. But I bring it up because that was the last Val Kilmer movie I saw. Looking through his filmography, all the 2000s, 2009 stuff, 2010 stuff. Sadly, I didn't see any of this, and maybe not sadly, based on what I know of some of it, but Val Kilmer came up on my radar again when he started doing the Mark Twain stuff.
Yes. I've actually not seen the At First Sight.
At First Sight was Mira Sorvino. He's blind.
I did see that.
Yeah.
I actually, do you not remember this story?
Maybe not.
You and my wife watched it. I was at home, and you guys had rented it, and I was there, and I didn't want to watch this, so I surfed on the internet. You guys had rented it, and I think you actually pay-per-viewed it back when we just got digital cable.
Yeah.
And you guys were watching it, and I was surfing on the internet, probably reading some Star Wars articles or something. Because I didn't want to watch that dumb movie where Val Kilmer gets his sight back, and I feel really silly. That was the old me, not
you missed out. So
yeah.
We had a lovely time that evening.
Yeah, so I was in the same room with you, so it probably wasn't that great. But this is the interesting thing is that I have seen some of these movies from here, but there was a dearth of like quality films. And you have to go into... He was in The Love Guru in 2008. It just tells you... boy, yeah.
That's a low point.
2009, though, he was in a movie. He had a small role in a movie with Nick Cage, Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans.
Yeah.
Which is a really bizarre film. Wolfgang Peterson.
He did that.
Yes. Really? And that is a bizarre movie. Nick Cage... a bizarre Nick Cage performance. Val Kilmer, though, has a small role, and you're watching this movie, and the thing that struck me is it's actually a pretty good movie, and Val Kilmer's small but important part is really well done. But you're watching this, and you're watching a movie where Val Kilmer has a small part. Like, not even a supporting actor type. He's got, like, 5 minutes of screen time, and it's like, wow. This is the guy who was Doc Holliday, who was Jim Morrison, who, in Heat, fantastic actor. And he has got a bit role in a weird Nick Cage movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of heartbreaking, even though I do love I do actually like that movie. And I like his performance because he gave 100%, even though he was a small role, right? His work ethic was still there.
And he speaks to that in the documentary. And he admits that there are some of these movies that, it's not what he wanted to be doing. But he did treat them all. He never phoned it in, I guess, is the phrase that people would use. And he didn't do that. He had more respect for himself.
And then more years go by. Gosh darn it, nearly a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing is happening. And during that period of time, that's when his throat cancer is diagnosed. And he has, many bouts with where he was close to dying, and that's when he was also starting to do the Mark Twain project.
It was right after Twain was really taken off, and then that's when he got the diagnosis.
That's when he got that. So, did you ever see any of the? I mean, obviously we saw bits and pieces of it and put it together from the Val Kilmer documentary, but
so outside of the Kilmer documentary, I've only seen clips, and I'd love to see the whole thing because it's coming off to me as one of those Doc Holliday level performances where Val Kilmer disappears and Mark Twain appears, just like the way Val Kilmer disappears and Doc Holliday is standing in front of you, or at least the Doc Holliday that should have been. And so his performance as Twain is really fascinating to me. There have been a handful of people who have done Twain stuff, and to varying levels of success, and his was by far the most interesting and the most fascinating. And I really liked the way he was approaching it, which was not to just do Twain's autobiography or Twain's some of the speaking engagement that Twain historically did, but he's almost like, I'm Twain now. And I'm doing the historical stuff to you, but I'm also riffing on stuff that's happening today. And I just thought it was a really fascinating idea, to take Twain, who is really kind of the voice of Americana, and to interpret him in a modern setting. I was excited for it. And so it was one of those things where it's kind of an off-Broadway thing, and where we live, we're never going to get that. Yeah. And so I was just always thinking, I hope he does a movie someday. And then come to find out the throat cancer, and the one piece of this story that I don't have a clear understanding of is how much of the voice is back. I mean, in the Val documentary, it's not much. Yeah. In Top Gun Maverick, I was surprised at how strong it. Now, he doesn't say much, and they build that into the story, but the few words that he does say, it was a pretty strong. It was certainly much stronger than the documentary.
Yeah, well, what I've read is that they used AI to improve the quality and the volume and clean it up, but that it was his voice and old samples put together to create to create a version of the voice, and they get around it by having him have cancer in the film. Sure. Again, I thought that he was a more interesting character, and I wanted to see what happened with his character, the Iceman character, through his career, and him bailing Maverick out. Yeah. I thought that I would have liked to have seen that. I thought it was a very cool move on the part of Tom Cruise, who could do anything he wanted, right? He could, with Paramount, have said, no, we're going to ignore this because I'm the star and I don't want him taking the oxygen out of the room with this. But he took a risk, in a sense, and was generous, and he gave the most impactful performance of the movie to Val Kilmer. And by participating in that scene, he elevated Tom Cruise's performance, and the entire movie was made better by that addition. To me, it went from a good, but largely forgettable, action movie. To a movie with a real emotional punch by just having that in there.
Yeah.
And that was actually a more meaningful relationship than the relationship he had with Goose's son, which I felt there were some issues with the way that was portrayed, and there was I didn't love the way that was handled. I think that it was a bit unrealistic. That normal humans actually can have conversations and talk through those things,
Right.
and that's what you got though with the the Maverick Iceman relationship. Was you had the respect that you had hoped would be there of these two who were at the top of their game, these two fighter pilots at the end of the original Top Gun, was there, carried through their careers, and you had the career man and the one who wanted to keep flying. And it was really well done, very powerful, and a great performance. And I think it gave Val Kilmer something to do. It was generous of Tom Cruise to put him in the film. And, to me, it took a film that I otherwise would have enjoyed, but probably wouldn't think much of, and made it one of the best movie-going experiences of last year, if not maybe the best.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And in the interviews when asked about that, Cruise was like, there was no question. If we're doing a Top Gun sequel, we're going to figure out how to get Val involved. And I agree. I mean, we joke about the Scientology thing, but Tom Cruise seems like a decent fellow.
Does, right? High energy, decent fellow. Everything I've read about him does seem like a really nice, cool guy.
Yep, and Val got to do that. I don't know that I can picture a career for Val moving on. I hope that something develops. I hope that there are more roles. I hope we get to see more of him. I certainly hope he continues to heal. I don't know how much is truly destroyed and how much of it will come back. He had a fantastic voice, so it's a shame.
It is.
But he's dealing with it well. He's still alive. He's still there for his kids. And in the documentary, he seems like he's got a great relationship with his daughter.
Yeah, daughter and son both.
Yeah, those are just some really cute scenes. And, he speaks about, like, doing the convention circuit and that kind of thing.
Yes, that was tough stuff to watch.
It really was.
That Tombstone thing.
Yeah.
But, I think he's struggling with that transition. But it was also... He fed off that positive energy.
Yes.
And the people treated him like he was a king.
Oh, and he is a king.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh, if I got to watch Tombstone with Val Kilmer, that would be the highlight of my life.
Decked out in the cool jewelry that his mom wore.
That'd be amazing. But the reason I bring that part of the documentary up and kind of maybe what I want to close my statements on, then you can have the last word, is he had a real strong connection to Twain as a writer, as a person, and as that character that he was building. And Twain, he talks in the documentary how Twain had to do similar things, when he lost his family members and was completely without money. And so he basically invented stand-up comedy, and started going around the country and touring and living off of his greatest hit, so to speak. And I thought it was really neat how Val kind of equated what he had to do to what Twain had to do. And even though it was something he didn't want to do, and he'd much rather be out there making the next movie instead of living off the past glory, the fact that he had that comparison to help strengthen him, I don't think that's a coincidence. And as people of faith, as you and I are, and as Val is, I think that's wonderful that he had that to hold on to and say, it's not as bad as it feels. And other people have walked this road. People that I revere have walked this road, and now I can walk this road. And I think that he's built up since then, and I think Maverick was a highlight. And I hope that there are some more highlights left that we'll get to see from Val Kilmer.
Well said. And I really didn't tie the Twain thing together like you did. But now that I think about it, that is a great analogy. And I just I've always enjoyed him in movies After watching the documentary, I came to respect him as a person. He clearly is a good dad. He could have been a better husband, but it also seems like he was a great son, even when his dad was not great to him. And being, he's a person of faith, and it sounds like he's found it through this, right? He did not become embittered or angry by the challenges that cancer has brought, and they were real challenges, right? He's a movie star, handsome, wonderful voice, singer, musician. Those things are gone for him, and it's made him a stronger person. That speaks a lot to his who he is as an individual, and so I think there's some things to be learned from this. So yeah, I guess I will leave it. If you haven't seen Val, go see it, or stream it, right? And then and check out some of his greatest hits.
Oh my gosh! If you haven't seen Tombstone,
Tombstone is, yeah, and you know what? If you have, but it's been more than 5 years, go watch it again. You'll pick up on the brilliance of the film, his performance, and the performance of everyone else in the movie, because it really is just a great film.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's it. I love Val Kilmer, and I hope you all do too.